Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming. This is a really good turnout. Thank you, Joe, for the introduction. To tell you really briefly about who I am, my name is Marie Kalliney, and I have about 10 years experience doing software development, most of which are in Agile development shops. I've had a variety of different roles, mostly on the business side, so I've done a lot of business analysis and project management. For the past couple years, I have been a consultant, and what I do, in addition to working inside of development teams, I help clients by doing a lot of process re-engineering, which you alluded to earlier, and I come in and help them assess their development practices today, how they're interacting with their executive management, and helping them do any process modifications, methodology changes, and rollout of those programs. So in addition to the project leadership stuff, that's the kind of things that I've been working on today. I have a couple of slides. I don't even think there are 10 here, and I want to go through the first few very quickly because I want this to be an interactive discussion. We have about 30 minutes, and so what I'm going to be talking about today is the change at an organizational level. How many of us, by a show of hands, are project or product managers? Oh, so everyone, this is great. Sometimes with a group like this, you end up with a lot of developers. They hear Agile and they want to come, which is great, but it's nice to see so many project managers and products. So we're going to be talking today about this, about the organization, the Agile organization. So does everybody here, does this ring true for any of us that for those of us who aren't working in Agile shops today, so we've got this lofty and distant executive manager, Michael Scott, who's one of my favorite characters on TV. He is this guy that's completely out of touch with the business, and he's funding product management, and he's getting status from IT, but there's no two-way communication, and what we find is very frequently we find a big gaping hole between the product management and IT. Does this ring true for any organization that we work in today, or is this where we were coming from? And
it resonates.
It what?
It resonates.
It resonates, right? On some level, that's what brought us all here today, was we want to open up the communication channels and roll out more agility within our organization. So, oh, I should say, does this remote work by any chance? Okay, I'll stay over here. So here's where we want to get, and this is what we're going to talk about today, is transforming our organization and plugging the Michael in and plugging the IT teams in and getting more productivity out of our staff. So of course we've got our three groups again, this time with two-way communication. So in the next few minutes, we're going to talk about how we get there to that happy and connected, plugged-in team. We've got 4 major steps, and before we get to those, I want to talk really briefly about bringing in some focus. So many times our IT organizations are losing sight of the customer. We see industry trending back towards, if anybody is familiar with Lean, and of course we're all familiar with the Agile principles. It's bringing this customer back into focus and keeping the eye on the prize, which is not necessarily a set of development practices or a way that we run a development team. We're really trying to connect all of these groups back into the single focal point, which is the customer, and of course that results in an ROI for us. So if we can take our teams and shift that mentality and keep our own focus as project managers on our customer, we're going to end up with aligning our dev teams to our customer as opposed to strictly the PMO or the product or IT. So that's why we don't have lines on this slide. We want to make sure that everybody has equal stake in understanding the customer's needs. So the first thing that we want to do is we've got this vision that we expect the Michael Scotts of the world to lay out. This vision comes from executive management. It comes from probably a lot of folks that are in this room. And what we don't want to do is have rhetoric around why we're making this transformation into agility. just like any other project, when we're putting together the business case for it, we do an analysis on the ROI, we figure out the business drivers for it, and we do that by justifying the benefit. We want to do that here too, if we're rolling out an Agile transformation within our organization. Senior management has got to set the business goals for that. We're responsible as managers for making sure that our teams are aligned with what those goals are. And we don't want this to be a passing fad. Oh, we read this buzzword in some magazine last week. It said like we should go Agile. We think there's some benefit to it. What we want to do is align the adoption with the benefit that we're going to hopefully see from it. Next thing, we identify our destination. So we work for individual organizations, right? All of us have different goals within them, and it's not a one-size-fits-all. So what we want to do, and this is on the managerial level, so this is no longer executive management, but these are the folks that are working out in the field that have teams. Many of us as project managers, we're going to define the path of the change program. We're going to go and align that with the benefit that the senior management has laid out. Okay? So what we want to do is figure out what this program is, and I'm going to get to that in just a second about how we craft what that destination is. The first thing we do is we look at the current state of affairs, and we figure out where we are today. We map it against those goals and find the destination about where do we want to be and when. Are there a lot of people in the room today that are focused on, that are in the midst of transforming any of their IT organizations? Yeah? Individual teams? Okay. And
yeah, we're transforming the entire organization.
Really?
Yeah, and from the IT side, we're looking at everything and looking to make some significant changes.
And how many people are in that organization?
We're about 130 in IT, about
Okay.
450 in the organization as well.
Okay. This can be done. And in the next couple minutes, we're going to get to why we think it can be done. Yeah. Yeah.
I know that IT is where quite a lot of us here, starting out, but I'm also observing that the process for engineering, business process management, and other tools that got their origins in construction and engineering and IT are now being applied in other areas where they weren't found before. So change management and process engineering is now going into soft skills areas, human resources, sales, even academia.
Sure.
And training education, where they weren't found before. So I think everything you're talking about can be applied, not just in IT, but in other environments.
Well, that's the idea, right, is that rolling out Agile and changing a transformation, it starts with the vision, right? It starts with that executive manager, the Michael Scott of the world, saying, I'm going to put this together. I'm willing to stand behind it. I'm going to incentivize and authorize the people working on the development teams to roll this change out. Here are the benefits. You are going to sell this to your team. You are going to become the change managers. And you're responsible for rolling out this project. That's why it's really important that that come from the top and not from the bottom, right? You can't align people to goals that don't exist. So it's a very good point. Okay. So in this level, the destination, we've got a lot of us that are out in the field, and we're now implementing that program. We're aligning our team's resources and the changes that are happening. They must get mapped back, those goals. So if you can imagine, in an Agile development team, we're always producing software that's directly related to a story in the backlog or something like that, where the product managers have defined what the requirement is. We're always mapping the software back to well, I hope we are. We're always trying to map the software back to the requirements. And with this metaphor, our senior managers, the managers that are in the field, must map their program back to the goals that have been set out by executive management. Those are our sponsors. They become the customers of this change. This thing, I don't want to gloss over that. As project managers, if we're not already doing this, we must make ourselves accountable, visible, and transparent to our teams. We have to set the tone for our teams. We're leaders. We cannot hide behind the glass wall and say, oh, well, guys, here's what I want you to do. That's where it becomes that fad. And this goes to a cultural shift. A lot of us that come from traditional shops, the project manager is sort of out here and the dev team is here, and you've got sort of mixed communication, but get in the team room, sit with the development teams, find out what the developers are working on, attend the stand-up meetings if you guys have them, if you're already doing Scrum or XP. So this transparency becomes very important. We get held accountable by our team, and we can hold them accountable too. Now we're actually going to start the implementation, and what does that road look like towards the goal of the change? So these first two things are really the meat and potatoes of it. We've got to identify the two people in management who are going to become the champions for our cause. The first is the product manager and the sponsor of the solution. This person, although they're not specifically in IT, they have to be visible to the organization. They need to be well respected because their name is going to get attached to any rollout of an Agile project. We need that person to have skin in the game and to care about this transformation. The IT manager is crucial. I bet we can all figure out why. But it's important that this person is willing and respected within the organization. They cannot be coerced into it. They can't be forced into it. They have to set the tone for their team. There has to be a level of accountability with the development team. And if this person is not willing to do that, find a different IT manager who is. After these two people are selected, then you worry about the pilot project that you're going to roll this out with. If these two guys are visible and willing, you're going to be able to identify a pilot project, make sure it's visible, make sure it's doable, but most importantly, make sure that you have visibility on an organization. There has to be business value to the project that you're going to select. So if you haven't done ROI on it, or it's something that's been sitting in the backlog forever that nobody got to because it's not a really high priority, don't do it. Don't do it. We want the pilot project to have impact on the organization, which means getting out software quickly, doing it well, having it testable, and hopefully repeatable. So are people doing ROIs on the projects that are on their plates now? Are we calculating return on investment? Are we making an objective assessment about the projects, what they cost and what they're going to return to us? No. Okay. So that's I'm going to write that down as a potential that we may want to discuss that in our next meeting, calculating ROI. So back to this thing about identifying the pilot. It's going to be really hard to convince people in senior management that Agile is worth anything if the software that comes out of the Agile team isn't valuable to them. It's got to mean something. And again, it has to be doable, because if you're piloting with something, you got to be able to walk away with the success that the product owner and the IT manager are going to be able to walk around and affect change within the organization. So are there questions on the importance of these guys, or how we're going to select a pilot? No. Okay. Yeah.
I have a question about the previous slide. You had the vision and the goals, the measurable goals. Just want to make sure they are measurable goals in terms of the rollout of the Agile process. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. How do you
It's a great question, and perfect entree to one of our very last slides, which is the proof. It's the metrics. For those of us that have been doing Agile for a while, we know that there has to be, at the end of the day, there has to be data, there has to be metrics. And this is what I call the proof. So at the end of the project, and hopefully you've selected a pilot that obviously is giving business back to people, you have to have measurable and demonstrative results. So on the product team, it could be as simple as, does the customer like what we built? Even if it's an internal customer, are they excited about the software? Are they going to be able to be references within the organization that says, this Agile thing, it really works, here's why. The last time I asked this team to do a project, it took them 10 months, but every time we got a release out after that, a maintenance release, the whole thing fell apart. It was very non-testable. But now they did this thing called Agile, and it really worked. So is customer satisfaction high? If it's not, it could mean that the pilot was wrong, frankly. On a project level, again, is the software, is the solution, is it built and tested? Did we develop a repeatable code? Well, repeatable might be sort of a poor choice of words, but did we develop a code base that's sustainable, that's extensible, that the business can actually add to or delete from as we do enhancements to it? And how did the people do? Did they grow? Did they cooperate? So again, it goes back to picking that team, being accountable and transparent with each other. So this is an example of the proof in the transformation. We will actually outline a user story as we're transforming an organization. This story reads, people that get added to an Agile team should quickly be introduced to Agile concepts, practices, and values. That's the story that we're presenting to our stakeholders, to the guys that are interested in, as project managers. This is exactly the story I would go back to management and say, this is what you're looking for. You're looking for Agile team members that are competent, that understand practices, etc. I actually list out acceptance criteria, the proof that says, we took these steps, here's how the team performed, we have metrics to substantiate that, we assign owners priority and the results of it right in our backlog is how we do it. So we run it as though we're running an Agile.
Marie,
Yeah.
is there any difference in the kinds of success metrics that you would collect for an Agile project, particularly a pilot Agile project, versus a regular IT project? Same metrics or different metrics?
Different metrics, and the reason is because if you're rolling out the first time and it's a pilot, it should mean that the team doesn't have a process that's in concrete. It should mean that people are going to be learning about Agile as they go. So you're going to find stories on that backlog that deal with the people and the growth. You're also going to have stories on that backlog where we train the product people, right? So as you move into an Agile environment, the product managers may not be good at prioritizing yet. They may not be good on articulating acceptance criteria or success criteria for that project. There's real training that happens across the board.
But once Agile has been integrated into your environment, are there different metrics that you report in Agile projects and traditional projects?
Yes. And those are on the project level. So the reporting on that, is anybody today doing reporting on an Agile project? I know you guys are, yeah. So, Tiffany, not to put you on the spot, but what would you say are like 2 or 3 very key differences between reporting on an Agile software project and a traditional one?
We have, with the way we're tracking metrics, we have an extremely granular level of detail. So I can tell you pretty much anything you want to know about the status of the project on a daily basis. Whether you're looking at the status of stories or the status of move to production or the change control, the amount of change control or the number of defects or how we're tracking against various lean measures that we might be using. It's just the level of detail is the biggest difference, I think.
Great, thank you. And in addition to that level of detail, we're communicating back to the business. We're communicating back to the business relevant information. So as opposed to if some of us are using Microsoft Project to track project status, what I have found with project in particular is that a line item on a project plan doesn't have a whole lot of meaning when it's taken out of context. But you can take an entire story out of context off of a backlog and communicate status on it. And you're giving the business back information that's relevant and practical. And it's this information radiator that Tiffany's talking about you can walk into any Agile project at any time, and the project manager has got to be able to give you metrics on that. So there is software that will calculate that for you. So like an Agile version of Microsoft Project is a package called version 1 or Rally, where the reporting is drastically different. And it's a very good question. I'm going to put that up as a potential, next topic for a next meeting. Agile reporting it is not easy. I'll say that right now, which is, I'm not trying to be superfluous about the answer, but it is a paradigm shift. I know, yeah.
Yeah, I guess, I think that the whole proof and metrics area is like one of the toughest things. And, my experience and intuition tells me that it's almost never really comparable to historical projects, right?
Comparable, yeah, you're right.
So when you want to show improvement, you want to show that Agile had a quantitative, or you want to somehow kind of aggregate and quantify what got better. I think the only thought, I'm interested to know what you and what other people think. The only thing that I can think of that might really help with that is if you get sort of a survey to stakeholders asking them to sort of rate the project on a number of subjective metrics, like were you satisfied with the level of disability, were you satisfied with the level of predictability?
Yeah, and I think in addition to the stakeholders, we have to poll the team, the guys that actually produce the solution, and we use all kinds of fancy charts to do that. We make it as not subjective as possible. What we know about Agile, and particularly convincing skeptics of it, is the data, it's the proof. And we try and prove that. We use maturity models that we have transitioned into metrics that will calculate how well a team is adapting to Agile practices. And we could spend hours talking about that. We know in Agile 2007, Agile reporting was a huge issue. Seems to be a question that comes up all the time. I frankly wish I'd thought about the topic before we got here today, because it's such a good question.
And the other thing is, I think even within an organization, across teams, is my velocity the same as your velocity? Is my, ideal engineering day or story point the same as yours? We actually compare throughput across projects, and I'm curious how many people have tried that and successfully.
Well, what is the business driver of calculating and comparing those teams?
I guess that's a good question. Maybe you don't need to. Right? Maybe you're looking for the teams that are examples for others.
A lot of my clients ask for that. They say, we've got 6 project teams. We want to know how each one relates to the other. And what I always say back to them is, we can do that, but it cannot be subjective. It can't simply be about product telling us that they're satisfied with it. There has to be proof that what they did, employed Agile practices. There has to be that. And every team, what I find, in Agile estimating and planning, there are books written about it because it's so important. Because we say that all of our teams are different, and we recognize and accept those differences, it's really a really difficult path to walk along to say, and now we're going to compare them against each other. I do not want to be recorded.
I actually discourage people from doing any kind of comparison like that, because no matter what the team, no story is ever written the same, no estimate of a story point is ever going to be the same. And as soon as you start allowing managers to compare teams, you have this false competition. One team, what you're looking for, what you want to encourage is consistency. If every team consistently delivers, this team consistently If it's 20, fantastic. It's consistency that you're looking for because that's what you can plan against. And it never makes any sense to managers the first time you talk to them because they're used to this old school way of every developer is created equal, every requirement is created equal, and they should be able to measure that way. But it actually is, it's going to be counterintuitive to actually measuring the success of their project. So it's a learning opportunity for them, but I would discourage it.
Very well said, yeah.
You were referring to stories and story points. I'm not familiar with that term. Forgive me, it's not your question. Are story points related to function points?
Not in this traditional sense that you're thinking of them. Feel free to
No, you know,
not-
by
not
all
in the
means,
traditional sense that
yeah.
you're thinking of them, no. Story points are really just kind of a nebulous sizing measure that we use of level of difficulty.
The story points are relative, right? And whereas function points try to be absolute in quantifying the size of something, story points are sort of relative to some baseline or reference point of the team's functions.
I'm not going to someone who doesn't know what stories are.
Stories are lightweight requirements that are used to Agile software,
Like the requirements related to financial software.
for the Agile software projects.
So imagine taking that whole big requirements document that we used to write back in the day. We break that out, and what we say, the principle there is that we say there is no way, and it's unfair to ask the business to define that set of requirements a year, 2 years in advance. What we do say is we're going to break that down into chunks of functionality, and as it becomes time to work on that functionality, we're going to define small, discrete pieces of functionality that are testable, that have proof that we accomplished that requirement. We call that a story. Developers estimate stories. It's hard, yeah.
I've been going to PMI meetings for 7 years, and this is the first time I've heard that concept. So I think it's a unique selling proposition of Agile and NYC to attract new people and to inspire them to learn more about this.
Great, thank you. Are there other discussion points or questions on the proof? I think the Agile reporting is going to be a very important piece. That will help us construct our proof, our evidence back to the companies that we work for that this Agile thing worked or didn't work, frankly. Yeah.
When it comes to comparing an Agile project to the non-Agile world, one thing that I've done in the past is I've been dropped into non-Agile projects to kind of save them halfway through, and then you can actually take some of the proof of what they have today. No testability, no delivery, lots of defects, and over time trend, bring down the metrics that you want, such as numbers of defects and velocity and all those things.
Yes, very good point, very good point. I'm going to table this discussion is really good, and what I don't want to do is rush us through it. We do have time right after the next presentation to offer all of us the chance to get into further discussion about that.
Just a quick question. We're recording this, but can you also put the slides on the blog?
Oh yeah, for sure.
That everybody can read through and stuff.
For sure, and we'll put up, I'd be happy to, if people are interested, until the next meeting, I'd be happy to put up some of the reporting metrics that we use just as examples, and they won't mean much out of context, but we can use those as, as our materials for the next meeting. Thank you. All right. Yeah, as the thing for the next. Okay, so what did we just learn? The discussion has been great. It tells me two things. One is that we're talking about something relevant, and the other is that you guys are actually interested in it and want to talk more about it. The customer focus is so important at the executive management level. By the time we get down into the dev teams and we've got developers and QA and analysts working on software, that customer has completely has become not the focus of the team anymore. Customer has got to be our business, whether it's internal, external. We plan with intention. Again, we put together maybe an ROI. There are metrics that are involved in proving the business case and the worthiness of the projects that we're going to take on. Measure with meaning, that goes back to the Agile reporting, success criteria. And then what we want to do, after you have had the successful pilot, your product owner and the IT manager are going to be the influencers within your company. We can hold them accountable to selling that success. So they're going to go out across the company and be those agents of change. And they can do that when they have a success to go brag about to the rest of the company. This gets lost sometimes. We forget that we got to convince other people and the skeptics within our company. So that's it. That's what I have. And after the next presentation, we'll be able to go into some more discussion about it. Thanks, everyone. Oh, thank you.